Yes, team. Welcome to another episode of the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Today we have a good friend and industry colleague, Martin Bugaj.
Correct, yes.
Bugaj. I've said that 100 times in my head and missed it every time. Martin is an online fitness expert and body transformation specialist, specifically for business owners, entrepreneurs, and execs. We have a number of mutual clients, and he's an all-round wonderful human being. Martin, mate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Kieran. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
So just tell our audience who it is you typically work with and how you work with them.
Yeah, so what we do, it's an online coaching program for executive CEOs, business owners, men in general. We tend to sort of shift towards that demographic. We have done over the past few years. It seems to be like the sweet spot for us. People who we like working with, people who we can get the best results with on so many levels. So, yeah.
How did you get into that space? Because, I see a lot of coaches say, I want to work with business owners, I want to work with entrepreneurs, execs, high net worths. And a lot of people talk about it, but they never really crack it. And we've collaborated on a number of different projects before. I've come in and done some work with the guys, spoken with the guys. And you are working with a very specific individual. They're driven, they're ambitious, they're successful. Lots of people love to aspire to that, but they can't quite get in there. Mm-hmm. But you've done it. And not only have you done it, you've got a track record of getting results again and again and again. And your clients stay. It's very unique. So how do you do that?
Well, it's a good question. I've been in the fitness industry since 2006. So that's when I really started. Became a fitness instructor, qualified as a PT, and then sort of the journey went on for many, many years. I owned two of my private personal training studios. For the most part, up until 2020, I was coaching people on the gym floor, and it was really variety of different clients. It was mainly men. However, I did coach females as well. Mm-hmm. Obviously, then we get to a point where COVID hit. I mean, I'll backtrack a little bit. 2015 is when I really kind of started doubling with online coaching.
2015.
2015, yes.
Yeah.
So
it's a decade in the game.
Yes. Yeah, in the online coaching space. But it was sort of very minimal. Majority of my business was still online on the gym floor in a private studio, and then an odd client here and there as a sort of, income not substitute, but like a support, I suppose.
Was that in London?
Yeah. So I came to London in 2004. So I'm originally from Poland. I suppose maybe we go through the story. So all of that in London. And then 2020 comes, obviously COVID year. And I know that for many people, COVID was quite a bad and unfortunate situation. However, for me and my business, it was the opposite. Not only did that year give me a lot of breathing space and space to really refocus and align, but it also gave me the biggest opportunity to really transition into the online coaching space. And I made the best decision, of my life, moving into that space and really fully committing to it. There we are. So to answer your question, how did I end up with that demographic? It really happened naturally over the years. Like I said, predominantly I've always worked with men, but that sort of executive business owner space, it started when I moved online. I've always had clients who were, either executives or business owners or whatever, because when you work on a gym floor in a private space, the hours are limited. So you either see clients in the first thing in the morning, people either do it before work, they're busy individuals, or after work. But then in between, you get the business owners who are more flexible. So that's kind of how it all started. And online, all you need is just really one client. We had a good track record, like you said, of results, and one client leads to another, referral, etc., 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 and to a point where, at some point, I think it was 21, it started with one client over in the US, business owner, multiple business owner, dentist. We did a phenomenal transformation with him, and he literally referred about 20 clients, and that's how it really started. That's how it kind of boomed from there. And
There is something to be said about US clients, and their willingness to refer clients is a hell of a lot higher. I don't know what it is. It's something about in Europe, it's a bit more of a secret, like coaching is more of a secret thing that they do more privately. Whereas over in the US, I've found that all of my US clients has never come through marketing. It's always come from just, thank you. I cannot thank you enough. Let me introduce you to this guy. And then, and it just builds like that. Have you noticed the same or?
100%. I think the mindset is so completely different. Everything from the fact that they really celebrate success.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Hugely. They are really proud of achieving and really happy to refer, really grateful. I think it's just that abundance mindset, I feel, is what really drives them and that sort of, American mindset, I could call it. That's not to say that, Europe or UK can't be, but it's definitely more so over in the US. That's who we predominantly work with, US. That's our main client base. So yeah.
I think also in Europe, we're a bit more reserved.
Yes, I think so.
We're a bit more reserved. It takes a little bit of time to warm up and make those connections. And even then there's like, you heard of tall poppy syndrome?
No.
Tall poppy syndrome. It's like, do well, but don't do too well. Yeah. And don't shout about it and don't show off because, we're almost like crabs in a bucket and we'll pull you back in because, like it's a different mindset over there. They really do celebrate success. One of my mentors is a guy called Rich Litvin, and he's worked with people in US government. He's worked with Hollywood stars, CEOs of like really big publicly listed companies. And he caught me once, and he said, and he's a Brit that lives in LA. So grew up in London, moved to LA, and he said, yeah, here's one thing that I've learned living 20 years in the city is it's not bragging if you've done it. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're underplaying your achievements and you're not talking about your achievements. The difference with us here in America is we don't see it as bragging if you've done it. So we will proudly, with our chest out, say, but the Brits inside us want to go a lot smaller. I think that's kind of wider across Europe in general.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree with that statement. Yes, I definitely, especially coming from Poland,
That's a different ball game, right?
Completely different ball game. And then coming over to the UK, I thought there was a big shift in a positive direction. But then obviously working with the US, I think that's, there's levels to it. So I would agree with that.
There is something to be said though about a piss-taking Brit. There is something about a piss-taking Brit.
Absolutely.
That will just rip it out of you. That brings you back down to earth.
And sometimes it's needed. I think it's not necessarily a bad quality, but when it comes to there's a lot to be said about mindset when it comes to any form of transformation, especially when it comes to your personal development and your inner work, etc. I think when you play it down too much and we take the piss, I think it can have the reverse effect.
Yeah, that's like self-deprecating humor. I like self-deprecating humor, but there is a line before it becomes a defense mechanism and it becomes an excuse or a way of going, well, let's not really deal with the issue. Let's kind of just laugh it off. Yeah. So what would you say the biggest struggles that you see with the clients that we coach from a fitness and energy perspective that stops them from really showing up and going out there and getting after it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say what I see most with most men that we work with is a huge majority of them, if not, I would say 99%, they tend to fill out everybody else's bucket but their own. Yes, they perform. Yes, they provide. They have so many responsibilities. They run businesses, etc. Like everything is, high level. But at the same time, in 100% of cases, it leads to burnout at some point. And I think not realizing that early on leads to pretty serious consequences in many cases. So obviously health, fitness being one of them. So I would say not looking after yourself and not prioritizing your health is probably one of the biggest ones. Yes, they drive the businesses, like I said, they drive the revenues. They want to be like the alpha males in the performance world, in the kind of area of expertise, but it comes at a cost. And obviously, when we met and we had a conversation, there was a big realization that if you don't look after yourself, you actually don't really realize your true potential. You think you may be operating on this top level at your game, but you don't actually know what your true potential is because you've never even given yourself a chance. So that's what we try to do, is give this man an opportunity to really become true best versions of themselves. I know it sounds a little bit sort of cliche because this phrase is sort of thrown around a lot in the fitness industry, but it really truly is them reaching the full potential in all areas of their lives. If their health and fitness improves, everything else improves. They have a better bandwidth, better energy, better capacity to deal with problems, but also reap the rewards, so to speak, in their own personal and family lives, where they can actually be present. They can actually do the things that they want to do with their families, friends, colleagues, whatever it may be. Whereas before, when they're on this constant treadmill, they're just not able to even appreciate what life has to offer. It's just chasing the next whatever. So in a sort of roundabout way, I would say that's probably one of the biggest things.
Yeah. Well, I see it for them as well as speed.
Yeah.
Like their lives moving so quickly, right? So fast. It's like the next meeting, or first of all, you wake up, kids, commute, or get onto a call, and it's meeting after meeting after meeting after email after call and whatever, and you go through the day, and maybe you squeeze a little workout in the morning if you're lucky, in the evening, and then it's again work, family time, put kids to bed, and often they're going back to work, and next thing you know, they're sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, and it's almost like a hypnotic state that they've fallen into, that's just normal. And then one day they wake up, and because it's so fast, sometimes they don't even realize what's going on, and they're overly stressed and overly unhappy, but they don't know because that's all they know. And sometimes it takes a coach to kind of punch in between the eyes and go, stop, just stop.
Yeah.
This isn't the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Devil's advocate, I can see how easily that can be done when you have so many responsibilities, people to look after, people relying on you, etc. You almost, and men tend to sort of close up and just do whatever they feel they need to do and ignore their own needs, but usually at the cost of their families. It's such a funny thing, because on the one hand, yes, you want to do the best to provide, but at a cost that if you end up in a place where you're not able, then nobody's benefiting. So that's really, the space where we come in and try to make these guys aware of, listen, if you continue that way, it's going to end up badly. And, first we need to kind of assess what is the goal here. Usually at this point, they roughly have an idea of what the goal is. They know that they have to do something because they got to a point where it's like, okay, if I continue like this, it's going to be too late. So, but you'd be surprised how many of them actually still ignore the fact. And I suppose we can dig into that a little bit more later. But it's all of that hinges on their own commitment to themselves. And that's such an interesting area. So I'm going to leave it here for now, but we can hopefully touch maybe a little bit later on that, because you are definitely going to have a huge input into that.
Yeah. Well, what I find, particularly with our mutual clients, is they've usually achieved it from the business sense. Like, you know, they've got to the top of their whether they've worked through the ranks and got to the top of the company, or they've built a business, or like they've achieved most of their goals. Not always, but most of the time they've done it.
Yeah.
So the objective for them for coaching isn't necessarily how do I make more money or how do I achieve more. It's actually, well, now what do I do? Because I still don't feel like I have the time or the energy or the focus or the presence of mind to be with family, or to look and feel how I want to look and feel. And that's what I call the now what moment, which is you achieve all of the commercial goals and perhaps all of the material goals. And you've ticked those off, but you're like, something's still missing. Like, what is that about? And it's in those moments where men go one or two ways, typically. They just set bigger goals and go and achieve them, and they kind of continue in the same space of kind of general, not super unhappy, but not fully fulfilled and aligned and clicked in. Set more goals, going to run after those and kind of run away from their own health and their own mind and their own way that they think and feel. Or they go, maybe I'm going to try something. And then they dip their toes in the water and they try something new. But the word that you used was commitment. Because there comes a point where you have to commit. You have to go, I'm going to do this. There's, I think it's an American phrase, which is when it comes to breakfast, the chicken is involved, the pig is committed.
Like that.
Yeah. Because you got to have some skin in the game, whatever the skin is. And I think it's almost like this, I'll just sort of see how it goes. And it's like this, this hesitation.
Yeah.
But you got to put something down.
Absolutely.
Got to get some skin in the game. And when you see clients start to put some skin in the game, all of a sudden their results start to change.
Of course. But that ability to really commit and back yourself up is huge, and not many have that. And this is the only thing that you need in order to really succeed in whatever you set out to achieve. It's that ability to back yourself up. Because listen, to get to a point where you know that you have to do something and still pull out, it's an interesting place. Because that clearly comes down to you not actually believing that you can. Therefore, you are afraid to commit for whatever reason. It's fear of failure, fear of success, whatever it may be. But without that step, you just won't ever know what's on the other side. And that commitment is that really that sort of line in the sand that you have to cross and see what how the life unfolds.
Yeah. And part of it is finding someone, if you don't have the belief, it's finding someone that believes in you and has the requisite experience and skills and knowledge to go, you might not be able to see this yet. Here's my track record. I can see it for you. Are you going to take that leap or are you not? Because I've found sometimes I haven't truly believed that I could do something, but I found people that have done the thing. And I've said, what do you think? You're the expert. You've seen this again and again and again. And tell me straight. And when you get a genuine person in front of you, a genuine expert, they'll tell you, yeah, you got this. And you go, okay, well, I'm just going to do what you tell me.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to follow that to the best that I can. Sometimes you take the thinking and the belief out of it, but there's an element of vulnerability required for you to raise your hand and say, I'm not really sure on this. Can you help me? I think that's a big handbrake that stops guys from going, all right, let's dive in and commit,
Absolutely. And 100% I agree with everything you've said, yet still sometimes, despite you explaining and really holding them accountable, etc., there is still that lack of belief in themselves that no matter what you do, no matter how many testimonials you put in front of them, no matter how much proof you show them, they still don't believe that they can achieve what's necessary. I mean, that they can put what's necessary into achieving what they want. So,
are you familiar with secondary gain?
no.
Secondary gain in psychology is essentially why somebody stays stuck. So I'm going to use a very extreme example, and don't take this as gospel or whatever, right? But if you look at a subsect of trauma patients, like obese women, and they've tried everything, there'll be a subsect of obese women that the reason they stay that way would be something as extreme as sexual abuse as a child. So the secondary gain of staying this way is, if I continue to look this way, the chances of that happening to me again are going to be a lot lower.
Wow.
That's an extreme example. So don't look at women that are in that space and assume, because that's not true. But there is a percentage of women that fall into that category. We use extreme examples so then you can start to get to more acute examples. One client might have grown up with lots of food as a child in a country where there wasn't lots of food. So all of his friends would love him because he'd be giving them food. So food made him feel important. Now all of a sudden he can't stop eating because food equals status and acceptance and friendship. And so then he keeps sabotaging on the food that he needs to eat in order to get to his objective, because why would he not want to feel important? Why would he not want to feel accepted? So sometimes when it comes down to belief, there's a secondary gain that's going on that's keeping clients stuck. I see it all of the time. You know, this fear of, if I'm not working 60, 70 hours a week, everything's going to come crashing down. Yeah. But what they truly want is to spend more time with their family. That's truly what they want. So the secondary gain of not changing is, well, I'm not going to come crashing down and everything's going to fail. So I think when it comes to belief, sometimes it's going deeper into those layers of secondary gain of, well, what does not solving this do for you? Like, if you don't shift this, how is that a good thing? And just the little whisper of, I guess I'll always be safe. Will you? Well, no, as I say it aloud, no, but I guess that's what's going on. I think that's where belief can start to trip people up. Is there's just all these little tiny little slippery beliefs underneath that keep them in, it's just not possible for people like me. Well, who says that? You say that. And when you can challenge them on a real intense level, sometimes I say this because in my job, I'm a professional mirror holder. I hold up a lot of mirrors. And if you don't like the reflection of the mirror, there's two types of men in the world. One will look out the window, pretend the reflection isn't what it is. And then there's the other one that will stare the man in the eyes and say, I've had enough and I'm going to change and I'm going to go and do that, you know. But that takes courage, and not everyone's ready for that. And not every client's ready for that. Yeah. You got to meet them where they are.
That's extremely interesting and super powerful. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. And I think if you're ready to look in the mirror and say, it's enough, I have to change something, and I'm willing to commit no matter what, like, that's the man that typically signs up. Yeah,
it is. It is. And I think even just investing money in oneself is also a big move, because particularly with men, money goes out to back into the business, back into family, back into children, back into all these various different areas. And it's funny, men never have a problem buying themselves a car.
Yeah.
They never have a problem themselves buying a car. There's something about the car and maybe the watch or whatever it is. They never have a problem with that. But when it comes to, hang on, this is actually for you to improve yourself and work on yourself. Often there's a bit of a mental block, which is, I can't possibly spend that amount on myself. Like, I've got so many other people I need to look after, and what about this and what about that? But I often say to clients that the price is part of the coaching. Because if you look at the price and you go, ooh, that's a bit of a stretch for me. That's quite intense. I would never imagine I would invest that sort of amount into my coaching. Just like the chicken chicken is involved, the pig is committed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you put in that level of commitment, the price can make you go, whoa. Because I know for me, when I invest in my mentors, when the price makes me set up, my execution is on a different level, you know,
100%.
like my adherence to any goal or any plan. Essentially, I'm paying for adherence to a degree because I know, right, if that's made me set up, I got to go and make this happen. I am going to go and make this work. Sometimes it's that. Whereas when you get to ultra high net worths and it doesn't matter what you charge them, it's not really going to touch the sides. That's where you got to have a different type of commitment. You got to have a different, you know, slice of bacon on the table, which because finances don't do it.
Yeah.
But that fear of investing in oneself, I've found, can be that handbrake because a lot of people have just never done it before.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because naturally one would think that if you invest in yourself, I mean, it can only be the best investment that you will ever make, because if you invest in yourself, therefore you gain something from it, therefore you become better, therefore it opens opportunities, doors, etc. Yet so many people just can't pull the trigger for many reasons, you know, psychologically, emotionally, whatever it is. You know, it's an interesting thing. I watched something very recently, a few days ago actually, from one of my, could call him friend, mentor, Chris, who I told you about earlier. And one of the objections that men have usually on strategy calls is the spouse objection. I need to speak to my wife. It's such an interesting one. And the way he explained it is, these men, the reason they say that they have to speak to their wives is because usually their wives don't believe that they can achieve what they want to achieve in that particular area. Therefore, they almost have to justify that. So they don't believe in themselves. The wife knows that he probably won't, the investment is going to be lost. Therefore, it's like, I know that she will say no. So that was really interesting for me to kind of, when he put it that way, because it makes a lot of sense. If you have a track record of not looking after yourself, trying, failing, let's say in the fitness and health area, and the wife has been sort of, you know, witnessing that for years maybe, at some point she'll say, well, what's the point investing X amount of money? It's going to be lost investment. You better put it in X, Y, and Z. And it makes sense. And so, yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah,
that was very interesting too.
That dynamic of she doesn't believe in me.
Yes.
I'm probably doing something stupid.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just check with her to make sure. She's confirmed my belief that I can't do this,
Yeah.
and I'm being stupid.
And I'm going to disappoint her yet again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's breaking that.
Mm-hmm.
What I find interesting, because in my sphere of mental performance coaching, and I'm really looking at the way in which they think and feel, so the emotions that are coming up, the decisions that they're making, so they can get more done in less time and feel better and achieve their goals faster. It's much easier for men in particular to invest when they see the direct correlation as to how it will help them scale their businesses. So if they see it as a business investment and they go, and most of my clients make a lot more money by working with me, not because I'm touching their business, I'm just helping them work through emotions that are tripping them up. I'm helping them getting clearer on where it is that they want to go, and then helping them make better decisions that then unlocks new opportunities, right? So if they can see the link with business, they tend to jump in and go, oh, okay, I can see a direct ROI here. If I was freed up to do this and this, it would open this door. When it comes to just, actually, I just want to be a better dad, and I just want to sort of spend more time with my family, there seems to be a harder leap for them to make in that commitment and in that investment.
For some, I've seen it on sort of both sides. Some extremely successful men, business owners, whatever it may be, they actually really want that part to develop, because there was an instance where the child wanted to play, and, you know, they went to play football, whatever. I mean, I could list a million different ones. but let's say, energy is one of those.
Yeah.
Fatigue,
Energy
energy,
for the kids,
stress.
yeah.
Going to a football pitch where there are other dads who are fitter and can easily play with their kids. And that is the trigger of like, right, I need to do something because I actually want to be, I remember this one case in particular. This guy said to me, I'm ashamed. I want to spend more time with my kids. I want to take them to all those activities, football, etc. But I am ashamed to going there and to taking them to those places because I'm the biggest, most overweight dad in that circle. And it makes me feel absolutely horrible. And I have to do something about it. And then to your point, there are men who, yeah, absolutely. They are so business driven that if they can see that this will help them achieve more in professionally, then yeah, why wouldn't you? That's almost like that logical brain going, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, makes sense.
Analytically speaking, most of these men are very analytical. Logically speaking, this is, if I am going to invest in myself and this is the return on investment I'm getting, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So 100%. Whether the other case is like, it's very emotional.
I can see with the fitness and body transformation side, absolutely how it's more emotional. I think for mental performance, sometimes there's almost like an avoidance around speaking more emotionally about how one feels and where that might come from. And that's where making the leap to invest in mental performance is a bit scarier. Because when it comes to business objectives, it's like, yeah, if I'm more locked in and more focused, more productive, and I can achieve my goals faster and feel better, cool. When it's like, well, let's talk about how you generally feel at home and generally feel as a man and as a leader, and when you're not in your power space of work, when you're actually in your more social life. That's for me in my coaching, there tends to be more of a roadblock because it's like, oh, am I really gonna open Pandora's box? And I don't know what I might find, and do I want to go in there? But with the body transformation stuff, I can see that.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the biggest reasons that we connected, is because there's this one particular client in mind that I have who you work with very closely. He signed up to our program way over a year ago now. He signed up for 6 months body transformation. And during those 6 months, it was such a difficult journey for him. And we would have multiple conversations, as you know, me and him, on Zoom, where we would almost butt heads all the time. And I suppose, in a way, I was just being authentic and honest and open with him. And I think maybe I was coming across a certain way. Later on, he said that he has a problem with authority, etc., and I probably was maybe coming a little bit like that. Anyway, long story short, he then comes back. There's been a lot of improvement. He comes back. We work together, and that's when you got involved. He signed up with you. And the work that you have done with this particular client has been absolutely phenomenal. Genuinely, he is a completely changed man. And I'm so happy and so grateful because I could see that potential in him, yet obviously I haven't got those same abilities as you do to articulate certain things or, relay it. Like that's your specialty.
It's a different
that's your
skill
field.
set.
It's a different skill set, absolutely. So I'm so glad that he pulled the trigger, and it's a certain type. And again, it proves the fact that when you do take that leap of faith and when you do invest in yourself, it can change the direction of your life 180 degrees. He is in a completely different place.
He's a different man.
Thriving, emotionally, psychologically, physically, everything. It's the most beautiful thing to see and witness somebody really, backing themselves up really pulling the trigger, committing to themselves, and achieving such incredible results. Amazing.
I'm
So
sure.
I would like to thank you for
Oh,
that.
thank you, Martin.
You know, whilst I have this opportunity right now, so thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure you agree. Like, we are so proud of this dude.
Yeah.
Like, what he's had to overcome
Yeah.
is unbelievable. And if you listen to his story, man, like you name it, grief, economic turmoil, huge successes in multiple different ways, building businesses, you know, he's had a real tough ride, but a successful ride. And for him, the key thing was getting him focused on, well, where is it that you want to go truly? Like, cut the bullshit. Like, what do you want? You know, that might sound overly simplistic, but actually, like, the amount of men that don't know what they want, and they're not willing to even just hold up the mirror to themselves and just say, look, are you unhappy with what you have? Just be brutally honest. Just sit still and just say, where are you unhappy and why are you unhappy? And sit with that. And is this the road that you want to continue, and what's missing? And for this client in particular, he's a seek and destroy player. So there are some guys that are, when they find a mission and an objective that lights them up enough, you've just got to set them and boom, and off they go. And he was one of those guys. He had a track record of winning. He had a couple of business setbacks too. And he was in this place where everything was okay, but he wasn't in seek and destroy mode. And what we realized was that there was a maverick in there that needed a limitless opportunity for him to focus on. There was a little bit of trauma in there that needed to be unpacked and worked on and polished. But once we unpacked some of the deeper emotional things, helped him understand on a deeper level how his neurology was working and how his brain specifically is wired, then all we did was we started to get focused on a future that's worth fighting for, and psychologically why it's important for him and why we can lock him into that. And once we did that, because I know with those clients, they're just seek and destroy, but we need to have a target that lights them up, that's not driven by trauma, but it's driven by abundance, that makes them go, that's a life worth fighting for. So after clearing out some of the trauma, after helping him understand how his brain works, because he has a very unique brain, and then getting him focused, that first tranche, he was on the quarterly breakthrough. So that's working with me over 90 days to set the foundations. His foundations are set, and as he shared the news with you, you know, he's stepping onto an even bigger opportunity now.
I'm so proud of him.
Yeah, and that was a big leap for him to make, but he's gone and secured that. And now that we've got the target, it's really simple. Now all I'm doing is reverse engineering him to go, right, who do you need to become the guy that knocks that out the park? There might be some limiting beliefs in there that need to be squashed. There might be some behaviors or some emotions in there that need to be squashed. It might just be a structure or how you're spending your time, mornings, evenings. We don't know yet. But because we've got that, it also makes your life easier because he knows where he's going and he's motivated to get there. So then I suspect his adherence, his communication, his energy, all of that has shifted. That's because we've begun with the end in mind. And when we begin with the end in mind and we reverse engineer, who do I need to become to get there? Everything changes. It all changes.
Absolutely. You know, it's been an incredible change talking about adherence and the program, our program. Now he just executes. Yes, it's not perfect. It never is for anybody really, because it's not about perfection. It's about commitment. It's about adherence. It's about really showing up.
Even imperfect implementation, like scrappy, imperfect.
100%.
All right, okay, you didn't hit your protein target. You got a few grams left. Ideally, we'd like chicken breast, but we're going to just wolf down a couple of scoops of whey protein. Imperfect implementation.
Absolutely.
Like when you take the perfection piece out, it's just grounding yourself there.
It's a great point. I think that perfection piece sometimes really creates so many failures because people are so obsessed about wanting to be perfect, but it's not about, like, life gets in the way. You'll never be perfect. And it's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent, because consistency, that ripple effect over time, that's what really brings success.
Yeah.
And so, you know, with this particular client, his adherence has been amazing. his focus, giving him that focus elsewhere has really taken so much negative and obsessive focus on the program here, because he's got bigger fish to fry over here, but he knows that this is only helping and supporting
It's
him achieving those
a
goals.
major component.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So again, incredible work.
Cool. Well,
Thank
look,
you.
teamwork makes the dream work.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And when he came to me, he'd already done a lot of coaching with you. So it wasn't like he was starting from ground zero. You know, you'd already put a lot of foundations in place, and all I was doing, I kind of, I kind of almost look at, this is going to sound a little intense, right? But
I'm all about intense, so let's
go.
go.
If we look at this client, seek and destroy client.
Yeah.
So what's my job? My job, let's say he's like a nuclear missile. I have to program the machine to hit the target.
Yeah.
And I have to program the machine to fire in a certain way. And when I'm working with the unconscious mind, all I'm listening for is what are the lines of code that haven't been wired properly in order for them to become the person that's going to hit the objective. Sometimes clients come to me with an objective. At this point, the future wasn't clear. So once we understand that's where we want to send the missile, all I've done is rewired the mind and the lines of code and typed it in the little unconscious keyboard. And now that's where he's cutting through the air, he's cutting through the water to get towards the objective, That's really all I did. Now, there is a specific skill set in there required, picked up through years of whether that's international boxing, whether that's international software sales, whether that's training as a therapist and cognitive hypnotherapy and NLP and all the experience that I've done. So it sounds easy, but actually the experience and the study required to get to that level has taken a lot of time. But once he's got his objective, not everyone's like that. Some people have very, like one of my best friends, like he will just have a feeling and then his whole future will change. And then he'll have another feeling and his whole future will change. Some people are more malleable, but there are other guys that you just need to wire them, set them, and just let the machine go. Then the next phase for this client that we're now focusing on is implementation. So made one big step to secure a huge business opportunity. Brilliant. Well, now it's how does he become the person that implements and works the plan and stays disciplined and steps up as a new type of leader.
Yeah.
And that's the next 90-day phase that we're working on, which again, super exciting. And he's doing really, really great work. And I'm super curious to see now like where he goes. And
amazing. Yeah, and I suppose making sure that he doesn't become complacent after achieving this big goal, because sometimes it can be charged with so much energy. You get to this point, you achieved something that you wanted for so long, and now it's like an air balloon. Now air comes off, and you kind of become complacent. But having somebody in the corner like yourself is like, okay, this is only level 1 or camp 1. Now we start climbing. It's incredibly important.
I always use the phrase, it's one thing winning the belt, it's another thing keeping the belt. Because there's many people that are one time, one fight champions, and there's somebody else that keeps the belt again and again and again. Now in fighting sports, there is a genetic level upon which, there's only so far you can really go. I will never be heavyweight champion of the world. I'm not that size, and I'm never going to be able to do that. But the beauty of business is it's such an infinite game. Like you can play business for decades and decades and just get better and stronger and faster and quicker and sharper and more efficient and more smooth, So in the business world, you can win the belt, but you can keep the belt again and again and again. It's not like, your age is it's partly a factor, but not a huge factor in what you can achieve there, So
in fact, I probably would maybe say that at some point it does become easier because of the level of experience that you gain.
Connections,
everything.
Experience, connections, and just and capital.
Yeah.
As you get older, you have more capital. So then you can take more bets.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So, well, look, I know he'll be listening back to this because he loves it. He loves his study and listening. So, you know who you are. Big love, mate. Big love. Yeah, very, 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 very proud of you.
Absolutely proud of you.
I'm really curious to see where you are, even when this podcast is launched, like the change from today to where you'll be then. I want to know a little bit more about you.
Okay.
We've done a session
Yeah.
together, and I got to learn a little bit about your childhood, and I was really fascinated by that.
Mhm.
So, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Poland in the 80s. So I still lived through sort of 9-10 years of communism. So it was an interesting time. I was born in 1980, so I'm 45. Small city in Poland. And in 2003-4, I came to the UK and decided that I'm going to build my life here. I had visited UK before twice for like 3 months, stints for like holiday work and stuff, and I just completely fell in love with with London and everything here. And from that moment, I knew that at some point this was the goal, to come and settle here.
What do you remember of communist Poland?
Not much, in the sense that there was no much. Yeah, we didn't have much in terms of, there was nothing in the shops. That's probably, I would say, the main thing. After, I suppose, I can't remember, 8-9 p.m. you can go out on the streets. It was military, etc. So, but overall, growing up was. I always think about it. My childhood. Maybe some would disagree, but my childhood was fairly okay, with periods of a lot going on. That's how I would probably describe it. Because, so, I grew up without my father. I was brought up by my mum, who had me very early, 17, 18, she was, so completely inexperienced. And as you can imagine, back then it was probably very hard, a lot of challenges, etc. But she did the best she could to provide the best life for me, whatever that means. Best education and all of that, as most mums would. So in that sense, I have fond memories, and I have absolutely terrible memories of certain events that happened in my life. So in a nutshell, yeah, that's how I would say eventful. But I'm not one of those cases where it's like, I grew up in complete poverty or anything like that. Yeah, there were stints of either huge abundance or absolutely nothing, filled with a lot of stress, anxiety, etc. So that's kind of how I would say a roller coaster, a true roller coaster of events.
You're clearly ambitious. You wouldn't be where you
Thank
are.
you.
You wouldn't be where you are without ambition. Were you always ambitious, or was there a moment in childhood or teens where something flipped within you and you're like, I'm going to go do something? Or was it even later?
Surprisingly, it's a very hard question for me to answer, because truly, I don't know. I suppose I was ambitious, but did I have I've always had goals. So I was ambitious in that sense. Yes, I've always wanted to create a good or better life for myself. I like the challenge. I've always liked the challenge. I've always liked, taking risks. The unknown was very exciting for me. That possibly, that side of me, that risk-taking element, maybe traces back to my childhood and the events that shaped me and my brain and my psychology. So I would say possibly that. But yeah, I suppose so. I've always had, when I think back, making the decision to emigrate to the UK, building my life there, etc. Like, that's a huge goal. I would have, I suppose, one big goal and then really chunk everything into smaller ones. So to the next. But one thing I would say is I've always loved and enjoy the process and the journey. That to me has been, and it is still today, the absolute best and most rewarding things. So yeah, I don't know whether I answered your question, but
Is there any stories? And if you need to take a minute to sort of rack your brains to see what you're comfortable sharing or not sharing, is there any short stories from you when you were in that teenage phase or that boy phase that went, yeah, I want to do something. I want to take some risks. Is there any particular formative moments where you're like, you know what, Kieran, like this happened actually as I reflect, and off the back of, like, here's an example for me. At school, I was a council house kid in a really nice area. So I always felt, whether it was other people putting it on me, it was just a story I was telling myself, I'll never know. I always felt I wasn't good enough, and you know, I'd hear all the other kids would go on holiday and I'd be like, oh my God, like why can't I have that or these things? And you just naturally put yourself in a box. On top of that, I had undiagnosed ADHD. So a lot of my teachers were like, you're bright enough to get really good grades. Like, why can't you just sit down and focus and concentrate? And for me, I always knew I wanted to be in business or working in something like that. But it was actually when I walked into a boxing club. My late coach, Martin Calvert, held up a pair of pads and he goes, hit those, just concentrate on these. And that lit a level of competitiveness and ambition, and it stoked the fire. I think I was 12 when I walked in. And from there, he said, don't worry about the other stuff, just fall in, like you said, fall in love with the process of training, and you're going to get setbacks and you're going to experience fear and doubt, and you're going to get your ass kicked from the other kids sometimes. You've got to dust yourself down. You've got to come back for more. Don't be afraid. Like that for me was a formative experience of walking into that boxing club that made me go, oh, there is more to it than this. I can go and make this happen. Do you have anything that you can look back on and go, now you mention it, mate, actually?
Well, I would say absolutely. And it's very much almost identical experience for me. I was taken to a kickboxing club when I was 10, 11. And the moment I opened the door to the gymnasium, the smell of the gloves back then, like really
leather,
sort of leather, yes. The sweat, the audio and the visual of guys just working hard, hitting, snap, all of that sort of controlled aggression and all of that. That I literally have a very strong visual of that, and that's how my story or journey with martial arts really started. Kickboxing. I would spend every moment in that gymnasium just like training and watching the old guys.
I had no idea.
Out of each other, and I just loved it. But like with me, so that's the first, I'd say. I would say I was always a fairly talented kid, like athleticism wise. So I was pretty good at it physically, but mentally I was very weak. And I remember that very well. I would be really great at the skill, but when it came to actually transferring that skill into real life combat or something like that, even in a control environment, I would really always crumble under the pressure. It would get to me. Looking back, I feel like I'm quite an emotional person. I'm quite, so I was a soft kid, soft and loving kid. So I don't know, maybe that. However, fast forward few years, and at the age of 17, 18-ish, that's when I really started growing into my own. Now, remember, I grew up without a father figure. So I never had that in my life. And I suppose that was the big struggle. I just never had the example. even though my father was kind of present somewhere, that he wasn't present in my life as such. But I remember it was a very good friend of mine who was a few years older, also actually back then sort of like semi-pro level kickboxer. We became good friends. He was a few years older, and he became such a strong father figure for me. And since then, genuinely, Kieran, everything changed for me. I entered a different kind of set of friends, different environment, and my mindset started shifting. And I became really strong mentally through that martial arts training, sparring, like at combat, at fighting, all of that, to a point that it started to become very uncontrollable.
What do you mean? Can you give me some examples?
Yeah, I that aggression, again, you could explain, maybe that there were certain things surfacing, and that's how it would kind of present itself, especially for a teenager growing up, because I now started to understand my capabilities, I would push that envelope a little bit too far, a little bit too far, a little bit too far. Thankfully, most of it happened in a controlled environment, but there were instances that I was like, okay, I really need to
get a handle on this.
Get a handle on it, because I probably could end up in a bad place. So, and I never really talked about that, but that also was an element or part of my decision moving away, moving abroad, just to kind of separate myself. But it was such a huge growth for me, that stint of time. It was phenomenal. I really truly became somebody who was confident, who could really back themselves up, who was taking risks, and just like didn't care, just because I knew what I was capable of, and I knew that I can protect myself. And I think that was the biggest thing. Growing up as a kid, I was massively bullied, and I was always afraid of altercations or combat or anything like that. So overcoming that mindset shift was, that was like literally unlocking something in me that really set me off.
There is something to be said about a masculine presence that helps you grow out of a boy into a man.
100%.
And I don't think it's black and white. What I mean by that is I don't think there is one moment and then you go from a boy to a man in all areas of life. You ever hear of the wheel of life, like one of the first ever coaching tools ever, right? Which is like, okay, you draw this circle, you have 10 little areas, and on a scale of 1 to 10, you rate yourself on family, on health, on money, on whatever, right? Well, I kind of see masculinity and men in that sense. So there are lots of different fields. So going from a boy to a man in money, in having a woman, being with a woman, and showing up in that area. Then there's actually physically, and there's all these various different spokes. But it just sounds like in that area, you found a masculine presence that could help you go, kid, it's time to grow up. Can't behave like that. Come on, like this isn't the standard, And there's something to be said about the value. And I do think combat sports really helps. Like, there's an epidemic in England, I don't know if it's the same in Poland, of holes in the door of teenage boys' bedrooms, where teenage boys were punching holes in the doors and in the walls because they didn't have someone there to say, hey, breathe. When you feel anger, breathe. You don't have to express it. You can channel it into a more healthy way, And it sounds like you had that guy come into your life and go, right, it's time to grow up in this area, time to grow up in this area. And the word that comes to mind is intention. He changed your intention to your objectives, your intention to yourself, your intention to the world. And instead of everything happening to you, you said, actually, it's time for me to impose my energy on the world. And that doesn't mean being domineering and hurting people or anything like that. It's just having the confidence to stand up straight with your shoulders back and go,
Absolutely.
I am here.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to go towards my objective. And
Yeah.
sounds like that was a key turning point for you.
It definitely was 100%. And just to your point, he was a father already himself. He had 2 little boys. So it's very interesting listening to you talking about all of that, because he had this very gentle side to him, and he had that very kind of don't fuck with me type side. And on top, we were like really good friends. And he took me under his wing. And I did say many times to him, later on, like how grateful I am. I don't think he actually realizes that we were just mates. That's how he kind of looked at it, probably, I believe. But that really changed the trajectory, I suppose, of my life in some ways, and gave me that massive confidence in myself. Yeah.
And there is something unique about combat sports insofar as I think combat sports and boxing are the biggest, combat sports and business are the biggest personal development tools like you can do. Yeah. Because they're going to shake you to your core. They're going to challenge you to your core. You're going to experience fear. You're going to experience scarcity. You're going to experience danger. You can get physically hurt. In business, if you're in the wrong business, you can get physically hurt, right? But, you're going to be challenged to those degrees, and it's looking within yourself and being able to push through resistance and fear and doubt and overcoming the odds and beating that. And there's also technique and skill. People think fighting or business is just sales and marketing or beating people up, but it's not. It's becoming a very skilled operator and understanding, right, I've got to drill this. If I really want to master the technique, I've got to do the same thing again and again in a boring way until it becomes crystallized. And then on top of that, it's risk taking. It's like, okay, if you only take fights you can win, you're not really going to get better. But if you take a fight that's too far, you can get hurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can put you out of the game, and it can put you out of business. And it's having that dance of being fully prepared and taking the right risks, and that's where the right matchmaker or the right business mentor can help you go, is that the right bet or is it not the right bet? And it sounds like that. That's also set you up for business too.
Couldn't agree more. I'd say on top of that, you regularly eat the humble pie, which kind of like puts you in place. But to your point, if the bar is not set correctly, if that journey or that development of you as an athlete is not done under the right supervision of a coach or somebody who truly cares, etc., like completely. Definitely it happened to me. Like, we had this chat earlier, like I had few fights in my life, like sort of in a controlled environment, and I have taken fights on a very, very short notice, and they were probably not the right moves. But hindsight is a beautiful thing. Like, I don't think I could ever be a professional athlete looking back. I don't know. There is part of me that maybe would have loved to, but there is part of me that also feels like, I think I'm probably on the right path. So,
yeah. Well, professional athletes is a different ball game. Prize fighting is a different ball game. Yeah. I never boxed for money. For me, boxing was always the Olympics. There's one Olympic gold medalist every 4 years. There's a new world champion every month, every other week. So that was always my thing. And also, like by the time I was 22, 23, I was already making a lot of money in software sales. So I was looking at it and I was like, I can get punched in the face for a living, and for my first 3 years, I'm gonna make 15 to 19,000 pounds, or I'm on track to go and hit 6 figures in the next year or two. So it was kind of like, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah,
I think fighting at that elite level is, you've either got to be a prize fighter. I didn't have that in me. I'm not the person. I've been paid to fight, but it's not my MO. There are some people that are like, I'll fight, pay me as much as you will. It's a different school set. And there's another school of fighting, which is you got nothing else. You have no other cognitive abilities. You have no other opportunities. You see a lot of these Mexican fights from these little villages in the mountains. Like,
that becomes your life.
Commitment. Yeah. Like what? They don't have computers or internet. It's like, but they can fight and they can go to the big cities and fight and get paid. It's like, it's a different mentality. Also, professional sports is ruthless. It's like, like your whole imagine if we could just destroy your whole business in one fight. Imagine like that. We just deleted your whole client base. We deleted your CRM. We deleted all of your marketing presence. We cleared out your bank accounts, and you had to start from nothing.
Yeah.
You know, for professional sports. I mean, I've worked with some professional athletes. It's a different
different level,
different kettle of
one.
fish.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's that one chance that you take, and you have to commit 110%. There's just no other way.
Speaking of that, you then committed 110%, and you got to London.
Yeah,
that must have been a mindset shift where you go, whoa,
it was incredible.
It's not Poland anymore.
Yeah, it was incredible. I remember back then. I came for good with the intention to stay. It was, I think, 2004, just after Poland joining the EU. So the borders opened, etc. So I was like, oh, brilliant. Ticket to freedom, so to speak. And, you know, back then, I remember it was with a good friend of mine. We hopped on a coach. It was, I think, like something like 24 hours.
24 hours on a coach. Yes. Damn.
Yeah. I can't remember. It was 300 or 500 quid in my pocket. We get to Victoria Coach Station. We hop off the coach, and now what?
It was like that.
It was like that. We didn't have anything.
Wow.
I mean, like nothing.
Yeah.
But that was the beauty of it. It's just, you know, in that moment, I was like in my element to really.
Which month was that? Was it the summer? Or was it the
September,
winter?
I believe.
Or was it was still warm, but it was getting cold. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the first night, it's like, where do we go? It's getting dark. So we hopped on a tube, or maybe taxi back then. We needed a hostel. We needed a place to stay. And I remember we ended up in Stockwell.
Yeah.
That tower doesn't exist anymore. It was like a really tall tower. We got there about 10 p.m. I from what I remember, it was late. Bars on the reception, proper rough. And it's like, you know, all sort of dealings going around. I mean, it was brilliant looking back. We got a room on like one of the top floors, no curtains, no bedding, nothing. It literally looked like a prison cell.
Yeah.
And I genuinely, it was brilliant. The one good thing that they had was like a good hot shower, communal shower, with a good pressure. So at least we could have like, you know, you could take a good shower and just like, fall asleep. And then next day you wake up, it's like, okay, let's go look for opportunities. We need a job, right? So back then it was easier, and So I came to London, I think it was 1998 for the first time. So I sort of knew London a little bit. So that was kind of an advantage. And yeah, you go to different restaurants, like literally. It's like knocking on the door to every single restaurant. It's like any jobs. That's how it all started. So I started, working multiple different jobs in different restaurants, washing dishes, cleaning, working behind the bar, making coffee, etc. And then on the weekends, I remember I was working on Camden Market, food market, selling. I think it was like all sorts of things. Mexican, Nigerian food, all sorts. I was one of my jobs also back then. I was a sandwich man. Yeah. So I got a bike, trolley full of sandwiches. Cans of Coke or whatever, and then this is your route. Off you go. That was stressful, man. On my first day, I remember like 7 a.m. in Camden, busy as hell, morning traffic, everyone. And I'm taking a turn, and the trolley just trips over the curb, and everything just fell out of the trolley, man. People start horning, beeping. But yeah, it was good. Yeah. I'm so fond of those memories. It was great. It was constant, to the next. You tick off each day.
You're in the hero's journey, and when you go through the hero's journey, sometimes it's like that. I have moments when I was going through my hero's journey where it's like, wow, I've got to make this work. Yeah. And it's almost like an adventure. It's like a game. It's
Absolutely.
Like, all right, what next? Yes. Like bring it on. Yeah.
100%. And also back, I was 24, I'm with my mate. We're in, in an amazing city, Everything is new, brilliant, awesome. Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Cool.
So just briefly, then from then on, 2000. So I sort of upgrade my jobs, like bar jobs. I get this job through a friend of mine in a like a sports bar, South African bar in the city, Liverpool Street. Massive sports bar, people from all over the world, staff, like usually, South Africans, Kiwis, Aussies, etc. I'm like, I love this. It's brilliant. So I get a job there, and going to my journey from then on, I sign up to LA Fitness Gym to go on my lunch break, because I was always, fit, active, like loved going to the gym. Go there. One day I'm in the gym. Somebody approaches me, one of the fitness instructors there, South African guy. His name was Kirk. Speaks to me, asks me if I ever considered doing like a PT job or whatever. I was like, I don't know what that is. That like back then, we're talking 2006. Personal training was just like, infancy stages. But I was like, well, that sounds cool. So I looked into it. But my coming over here to London back then, my dream was to get a degree. So I managed to get onto a degree course, sports management, and I used the loans and the grants to then get myself qualifications to do my fitness instructor. And that same guy who gave me the idea, he then got me a job randomly by accident, day before me qualifying.
Wow.
The exam, he rings me, he's like, have you got the qualifications? I've got a job for you if you pass. I was like, I've got my exam tomorrow. I passed 99%, I passed it. I was the top 3, I think, of the group, which was amazing. Rang him back, got me a job, introduced me to the club manager who was his friend. They were short of staff. LA Fitness Highgate. That's how I got my first job, literally almost immediately. And I go from kind of bar work, etc., to now being a fitness instructor. Again, loving it.
Yeah.
Loving it. Like, again, fitness clubs like that, they didn't really exist back home back then. And now you've got swimming pools, saunas, all of that stuff. It's like amazing. New people, new opportunities. So I was just in my element.
Especially when you're in London as well, because you're meeting such fascinating people. It
was incredible.
Yeah.
So from then on, I do like a year of as a fitness instructor. In 2007, I commit to doing a 6 weeks intense PT course during the holiday break. I still work part-time then, and I study, and I do the my PT qualifications, finish that, start as a PT. Now I'm self-employed.
Wow.
Setting up my own business, like that's wow, amazing. So the entrepreneurship starts from then on, and the rest is history, really.
And now you're here.
Yeah.
Wow. What an inspiring story,
cool.
man.
Thank you.
And you look back on your story, I see you loved it.
I do it time and time and time again, man. I loved it.
I loved the journey.
I genuinely loved it. I think part of this whole journey, the way I look at it so fondly, is a massive gratitude that I have that the UK gave me the opportunity to like get all these things fairly easily.
Yeah. I actually get angry with Brits. I actually really do. And particularly living here in Dubai, you get a lot of Brits that come over here and they've only got bad things to say about the UK.
I hate that.
It's the only, like, oh, the UK is finished. Oh, London's a shithole. Oh, the tax situation is shit. The NHS is shit. Education is shit. Like, they just have only got bad things to say. And I truly don't believe you know your country until you've left it. And especially when you've traveled the world and you start going to places where you realize, wow, even us in the working class of England, we can still, I've got guys out here that run businesses where they've got staff that can't read or write. A universal human right for me is the ability to read or write. I think being born in the UK or being able to get into the UK, don't get me wrong, it's harder now. There's no denying that. it's still a golden lottery ticket.
Yeah.
You know, access to London. Wow. Unbelievable. You know, when in my hometown, I'm literally in Hertfordshire, it's where I grew up, just on the doorstep, 20-minute train journey to King's Cross. And everyone used to say, oh, it sucks living around here. I was like, are you kidding? There are hundreds of millions of people fighting to get to London. It's on our doorstep. Like, it really is.
It's a mindset.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
You know, and if we go back 2 generations in my family, you know, I'm half Spanish, half Irish genetically.
Right.
So, you know, they came to the UK and they made a life for themselves. And yeah, they contribute and they pay their taxes and it goes back into the system. But I just think, like, we're so fortunate.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you spot that, because there's a lot of people that like, does the UK have its problems? Absolutely.
Of course, everywhere does.
Could it be better?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But there is a lot of people now that only have bad things to say. And I always think, like, especially if that's where you grew up or you came up in your career, it's like, that gave you the springboard for everything you have, man. Like,
truly
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that, you know, I have a huge amount of gratitude for, you know, to the UK for all those opportunities. Yeah. And listen, that's not to say that I wouldn't have those opportunities back home. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not playing a victim or anything like that here. I just, you know, chose my life. I committed, and that's where I wanted to be because I saw better opportunities for myself. You know, so yeah, that's kind of.
Were there any moments in that story and in that journey where you were really looking at the darkness of, fucking hell, man, how am I going to pull this off? Like, oh my God. Or, because it's easy for us to look back with rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah.
Sometimes we actually forget how difficult the things were.
Do you know what, Kieran? My honest answer is probably not. I never look at setbacks or, you know, like problems or anything like that way. I always look at it like life, the universe is trying to teach you something here. Take the opportunity, ride with it. You are the only person that can make things better for yourself.
Yeah.
There's nobody else to say, like, you can have friends, you can have family, etc., that can help you on the way in one way or another, offer ear or whatever. But you have the ability to change your life. And I truly believe that. So I don't look at anything back going like, oh yeah, that was tough. A lot of it was tough, but there was beauty and kind of, you know.
Well, it's not necessarily looking back and going, this was bad. But can you remember any specific, like, I have one moment.
Okay.
I was living in my auntie's flat on an estate in South London. She still lives there. And she's got so much love. And I came to her so broken and in such a dark place. And I was living on her sofa. She threw it away a couple of years ago. I actually would have paid to have kept it. Like, I was sleeping on her sofa. And it's freezing cold outside. My uncle he would work late at night. He was a journalist. So he'd be tapping away in the front room. And my auntie would be sleeping in the bedroom. And I remember it being really dark and really cold, and I'm in £15,000 of debt from a failed technology business that I tried to set up, and all I was doing was going into the office and essentially putting out a hell of a lot of cold calls and building business and closing deals. From 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. was Europe, and then 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. was US, right? It was a really difficult moment, and obviously I'm not sleeping very well, and I'm getting a lot of headaches. I'm not very well, and I'm fighting still, by the way. I was still fighting at that point. And it was really difficult, and there was a lot of darkness in that. But then there was a moment where I remember it being freezing cold outside and thinking, my God, I've got like a blanket and I've got like my sofa, and yeah, I can still fight. And that was like a really tricky moment on the journey. And I look back at it really fondly now. Yeah. But I remember at the time feeling grateful, but I suspect if I put myself in my shoes back then, it would have been really difficult. Yeah. I know it was difficult and it was fun at the time and it was exciting, but at the same time, I kind of think, yeah. There's any like moments in the journey you can think back on where you're like, yeah, you know?
You know, I'm sure there are plenty. If I really had to kind of scratch my head and really dig into my memories, I'd say, yeah, the sort of the grind of working 7 days a week, getting up at 3 or 3:30 in the morning to get a bus. Back then, I was sort of southwest London, traveling all the way up to North London to open a gym at like, half 5 or 6 a.m. So, and then doing a shift, and then, working on the market, cold outside, So I suppose that it was a lot of it was hard.
Uh-huh.
But again, it was such a journey.
Yeah.
You're
still having fun.
I still had fun. I still had fun. Yeah. I don't think there's anything in. I'm sure that if I really had to kind of think, I would have found something. But overall, it was tough, but it was amazing.
Well, it sounds like you had a lot of faith.
Oh.
People often hear the word
Bags of
faith and they assume they mean religion. No, I mean faith in the universe,
Yeah.
that something will come good for
Absolutely.
me. And the ability to surrender to, I don't have the answers right now, but something will come good. And I had that faith and that belief. Not always believe in myself. I believed I could do something. I had moments of doubt, but I always had faith, which is things can be better. I know they can be better. I don't care what anyone tells me. I know things can be better. And then eventually I found mentors and friends just like you did.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, they can be better. Come this way. Like, oh yeah, I knew they could be better,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think maybe to going back to your question, all those years back, no, it probably would have been later when I was in a relationship with my wife and I was stuck on a gym floor. I mean, when I say stuck, it was my own choice, but there were periods of time where I think I got to a place, okay, now I'm sort of settled in here and I am identifying certain knowledge gaps or experience gaps that I have, and that's really what's holding me back mentally, psychologically, by making a leap, moving forward and creating better life for myself. And so I give you an example. I would be doing okay, training clients on the gym floor, etc. But I knew that I wasn't fulfilling my full potential. Now, again, me being me, I was super grateful and happy, and I could do it for free, just seeing my clients. It was amazing. But at the same time, okay, I am in a relationship and I have to make money. I have to offload my wife. Like that became more and more of a sort of heavy kind of burden.
Taking
on
up
me.
headspace.
Yes. And now looking back, it's kind of, again, it's quite nice, but I was a few times in a spot where I was like, okay, what's the point? Okay, yes, I'm enjoying this. Yes, I know that I'm doing the right thing. I'm in the right space, but again, I'm not really hitting my full potential. Is it maybe time? Am I being naive here? Is it maybe time to look for a job, to get more security, income, etc.? And I had those conversations with my wife, and she's like, "Listen, just maybe start looking for a job, because this is not working. This is not working. This is not working." And I'm like, there was something in me. I would literally like go and look for jobs, etc. But I was like, no. I felt like a fraud with myself because I knew that I did not give it 100% of my true ability to make my life better in what I know and believe is my calling. And that was so strong in my heart. And I felt and believed in it so much. And so I was constantly, even back then I was just investing in different things, mentors, courses, this, that, but just something wasn't clicking. It was like, okay, I would get a little bit of knowledge here, there, make things better. But again, I was just constantly held back by, okay, I have to be on the gym floor and I'm knackered and I'm getting up at 5. I've been getting up at 5 for the last 10, 15 years, and again, fast forward, 2020 comes, life kind of stops for a bit. It gives me the space and opportunity to breathe, zoom out, invest in a mentor, go all in. Something that turned out to be the right decision and the most perfect opportunity and the most perfect choice. And yeah, since then everything's just changed incredibly. So
I'm curious, everything you was investing in at the time that wasn't working, how much of that was those investments, so the courses or the people that was on, how much of that was the intention and the implementation of those investments? So I get a lot of clients that come to me and say, oh, I've invested in this coach, I've invested in like 3 fitness coaches and like 2 mindset coaches and 4 business courses, and none of it's all worked. And whenever I hear that, I'm always like,
Okay, so the way I would put it is, looking back, I probably didn't have the bandwidth to really fully commit because I was so burnt out. And even though I really truly was giving it like a good shot, I would get stuck. It would be online. You know, you wouldn't have immediate access to speak to somebody, to ask the question, to this, to that. There was probably a lot of self-limiting beliefs back then, me not really believing in certain abilities, etc., things like that. So I would say that. And also finding the right person. I really attribute everything to that. Because I know what I was capable of, and I knew that if somebody really shows me how, I can do it. And that's when I met Chris and Andrew, and that's when it all changed and it all happened. And it was, I think what was really important for me was that full transparency that they were able to offer and give me. This is how we do it. Just take it, go. And that built such a huge trust. Whereas before I was in those mentorships and they would really, they would give you a little bit here, but I could sense that they kind of holding back the full thing. And I think at the back of my mind, I'm already in a lost position. You know, that was at least my sort of thinking. So until I got to meet Chris and these guys, that really truly changed completely.
One of my old boxing coaches, he was a Team GB coach and an England coach, and he said he used to have a bit of jealousy about him, but he said something once, you know, where this guy won the national title, and his coach, a lot of people didn't really respect him, right? Like at all. Like, he hadn't really trained anyone. A lot of his methods were a bit odd and technically incorrect from the establishment's standard. And he goes, is it that coach was so good, or was it the jockey, or is it the horse? And that made me always think, wow, because there are boxing coaches out there, they'll produce one world champion, but they won't produce any others just because they had one really good horse. But then I kind of thought of this over the years, especially as I stepped more into mentoring, and I was like, you know what? You need a really good horse, but you need a fucking great jockey as well. Yeah. And if you can become the person, and from the mentoring standpoint, if you can become the type of jockey that can spot the right horses that you know, no, we can win something together on this. But at the same time, if you as the horse, as the client, can spot the right jockey, where you know, well, he's going to help me win the race, and I've got the abilities, and I know I've got it in me. Yeah. And it just sounds like the jockey and the horse aligned, and then
really
boom,
clicked. Yeah.
Blinders went on, and off you went.
And also, I suppose... And
you didn't give up.
Yes. I would have never given up, because truly, again, I knew deep down that I would feel like I would be a fraud if I did. Yeah. So unless I knew that I gave it 100%, I would never. But also, timing is everything. So around that time, the news of my daughter coming to the world in 21, that
lit a fire up your ass.
That was the biggest fire under my ass. That changed me as a man. Wow. Yeah, incredible. So it's funny, like I sometimes look at that. Sometimes men need to be faced with a situation when they really grow a pair and go for it and fully commit. because if you don't, then you always kind of like bumbling around and, you know, without purpose. I think we need goal and we need a purpose.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I'm so big on the goal setting and the purpose when it comes to our coaching program. You know, I will not take you on unless I understand what your goal, what your purpose, why, because that is the difference between people making it and not making it. If you just want to do it for the sake of it, like, you can probably do it on your own. But if you truly want to change your life and the life of the people around you, your family, your future, we're here to fully support you. And that's what really gives me the buzz and you know,
Well, that's in the intake calls. You're speaking to someone. And like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll say, yeah, you tell me you want this, but I'm just not buying it.
Yeah.
And what? I don't believe you. What do you mean you don't believe me? From what you're telling me, from the way that you've told me, in which you've behaved up until this point, I don't believe you. And I think you're kidding yourself. And in that moment where you'll really figure out where the man is, again, you hold up the mirror. Does he look outside the window and refuse to look at brutal facts and reality?
Yeah.
Or do they look back and they go, where are you coming from with this? And then you start to have, okay, all right, and then you can start to have that conversation. But if you can't get to, you know, what's the point? And there are moments in life where you will bumble along in the wilderness a little bit. Like,
sometimes it's needed.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's needed as well to really, you know, take stock, look back and go like, the fuck you're doing? Come on.
Where am I going next?
Yeah.
I talk about the whole world's locking in. Sometimes you need to lock out, bro. Sometimes you need to lock out and go, you know what? There's no need to push business. There's no need to push this goal right now. I need to lock out for a minute. And then you lock out and then you take stock and you let the dust settle and you go, right, now I'm ready to lock back in. And it can't just be this constant level of tension and ambition and growth. You have to have moments in the wilderness. And if there's any men listening to this that are in the wilderness and they want to get out of it, then a change agent like a coach or a mentor can just come in and go, right, well, let's see whether or not you're ready to lock back in. Sounds like you are. Motivation is there. You just need a target.
Yeah.
Or actually, I'm not buying this. And you need to think about whether or not this is truly important to you, you know?
Sometimes it's hard because men are particularly hard to really trust and open, especially to when it comes to other men. You know, I think there's pride attached to it, there's ego, etc. Many different things. And asking certain questions when you first meet somebody, when there's no trust. You've just met them on a Zoom call and you start asking challenging questions or difficult questions. Some people can sort of recall and kind of close off and not let you in. But it's also a beautiful time where if you ask the right questions and if you create a safe space, a lot of amazing things can really be born from that, and the journey really starts. And
I'll challenge your language slightly, which is I don't think that men need safe spaces. I think they need brave spaces.
Okay.
And the difference between a safe space and a brave space. A safe space, it's a little bit more feminine. It's like, how are you? How does that make you feel? It's okay to feel like you're feeling and whatever. A brave space is a little more like, right, we're going to do a bit of sparring now.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Because if you go into sparring insofar as it's okay, no, dude, someone's going to come punch you in the face. You got to be brave, bro. You got to be brave. You got to step into this. So I think with men, we have two issues. Number one is this expectation of they should have safe spaces. Actually, maybe they just need brave spaces, places where they might get punched in the face a little bit, metaphorically, not lamping a client in the face, but giving them that, all right, look, I'm going to ask you some questions and some of them might hurt and some of them might be deeply uncomfortable. Are you ready to engage in a little bit of light sparring? And that's one frame. And then the other part is how we expect men to open up. You know, like generally men open up not sat in front of each other. It's usually when you're doing something like you're on the gym floor, you're squatting next to each other, or like you're doing a bit of sparring and you're talking about sparring on the way home, and then it just sort of slips into the conversation. I'm finding this quite difficult. So by creating those brave spaces and inviting them for contact, it's like one question I always have when it comes to feedback is I'll say, hey Martin, on a scale of 1 to 10, how intense do you want some feedback right now? Like 10 is the sword, 1 is the feather, you know, like 5 is like a rubber mallet. Well,
I'd always go 10.
right.
The sort of,
Yeah. So
what's the point otherwise?
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
So now that I know that you're a 10, I can hit you with a 10 because I've invited you. In fact, I first say, would you like some feedback on that or not? And if the answer is no, you kind of have a closed-minded client or somebody that's not ready to make some change. You go, yeah, of course. Okay, how do you want that feedback? 10. Okay, so you've got permission for feedback and you've also got permission for a 10.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think you're talking shit, man. What? I think you're talking total shite. Why? And that's a 10, right? A feather might be, I'm not getting the feeling that you truly believe that. I don't know why. Something feels off, But that's creating that brave,
I love that
brave space for
I love that.
for men to go, come step in for a little bit of light technical sparring. I'm not going to pull up any trauma. You don't need to tell me about your relationship or anything of that depth. But if you truly want this, it's just a simple. Some people might listen to that and think that's very pedantic on language. But I truly believe language is the frame and the setting upon which all conversational environments are created,
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. I love that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll borrow that.
Yeah.
It's great.
Cool. Well, I got one final question I've deeply enjoyed today. It's been amazing. I could just do this for hours and hours. Forget my company, Total Mental Performance, but what does the phrase total mental performance mean to you? If you had total mental performance, how would you know?
I think it is the ability to achieve your full potential and I think it's a whole package, because I always say whatever you can believe in here, and if you work that muscle, everything else will follow. So having that total mental performance allows you to be unstoppable. That's how I would describe that. That's how I see it.
For those that are listening to the podcast, Martin was pointing at his head, his brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mind.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Martin, mate, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Where can everyone find you? There'll be some people in my audience listening to this go, I want to go work with that guy. Where can I find you?
So probably my website, www.martinbugaj.com, easiest way, or Instagram at Martin Bugaj Fitness. I'm on Facebook, Martin Bugaj. LinkedIn, same thing, Martin Bugaj. So yeah, these are the places where you can find me. And yeah.
Cool. Thanks so much
very
for coming
much
on.
for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And it's bizarre because we met only last year. I feel like I've known you for a very long time. We've kind of worked together.
We've done quite a lot, haven't we? Yeah.
We've done quite a lot over the past year. But today is the first time that we actually
Sat
met
down
in person.
Yes.
So I'm truly grateful. And thank you for having me.
Too. We got a free afternoon. We're going to go grab a steak and just chew the fat, metaphorically and literally.
Yes.
Cool. All right, team. Look, if you enjoyed that episode, please do share it with anyone that you think needs to hear it. We're trying to get the Total Mental Performance podcast for business owners, executives, and coaches out in there to the world. Please do leave a 5-star review and don't forget to hit subscribe. Big love. Hear you all and see you all in the next episode.